You asked me for Baja chicken hash from Cheesecake Factory, and I made it. It's here, hot, ready, and delicious. Okay guys, we're gonna get started with making the Ranchero style sauce. This is not traditional in any way. This is a much quicker and flavorful sauce that will make this dish taste like it took hours to make, but we're gonna make it real quick. I'm gonna get started by mixing all of the dry ingredients in a bowl. And I'm starting with 3 tablespoons of flour, 1 tablespoon of dark chili powder, 1 teaspoon of ground cumin, and then I'm gonna add half a teaspoon of garlic powder. Now, I've noticed in other videos, I've never really said it, so it merits commenting. I use a salt grinder as well as a pepper grinder. I prefer pink Himalayan salt over the other kinds of salt. Everyone has their preference. By all means, use your own. I use a 1/4 teaspoon of salt roughly here and a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. If you love the flavor of black pepper like I do, go ahead and add a little more. You can add a little less. This is one of those things that you can play with. After that, I add a teaspoon of dried oregano. Now, my oregano, I grow it at home. So I dry bundles like this, and I just have to rub the leaves on. They just come off, and they give a great flavor. If you don't have this and you're going to be using the one that comes in a bottle, like a dried ground oregano, only use half a teaspoon. It is a very powerful, intense flavor when it's dried and bottled. So I tend to go a little shorter like that. And after that, I'm going to be adding 2 teaspoons of chicken bouillon powder. If you don't have chicken bouillon powder, that's fine. You have chicken broth. You can substitute 2 cups of chicken broth, or you can add 1 cube of chicken bouillon and 2 cups of water. Moving on to the cooking portion of this sauce, we're going to add 3 tablespoons of olive oil or a light cooking oil to a small stock pot or to a small pot. And then you're going to heat this up to medium high heat. To this oil, once it's warm, we're going to add the dried spices and the flour that we blended together. We're going to let that cook for just a little bit down. What that's doing at this point is creating a roux or a spiced roux, because the flour and the fat together create that roux. By adding the spices in, like I always say, your spices are fat soluble, which means when you add them to fat and you apply heat, they taste better. You wake them up, they come back to life. And at this point, you just want to mush it together, create kind of like a thick roux. And then I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. The tomato paste is going to give you that richness that you get, that tang from the sauce that you usually get in like tomato sauces. And it's awesome. It tastes great, but you have to cook it in with the spices as well. So that's where you see here that I'm blending it and I'm kind of mashing it together. That's going to cook for just a couple seconds. And then we're going to add in 2 cups of water. And I add it in slowly because you want the roux or the spice roux to start breaking apart so you don't get a lumpy sauce. This is essentially a gravy we're making here. So you see I start adding it a little bit at a time and start whisking it in, having it work into that sauce and create this creamy sauce. I'm going to whisk in all of the water little by little. If you are not using the chicken bouillon and you're going to be using chicken broth, you wouldn't be adding water at this point. You would be adding chicken broth. If you're using the bouillon cubes, you would add that in and you would be adding the 2 cups of water. Once the sauce is smooth and fully blended through and there's no lumps, you're just going to allow it to come up to a boil and start thickening. Don't walk away from it. You're going to want to sit there because it does happen fairly rapidly. All in all, at this point, it takes about 2 minutes for it to come up to a boil and start to thicken. That's how quickly it happens. And now at the end, just to finish it, you're going to add 1 teaspoon of apple cider vinegar, whisk that in, turn the heat off, and set it to the back of the stove and just let it hang out there until it's ready to serve. It'll stay warm If not, you can just heat it up real quick for just a minute right before service. Okay, let's work on the Hollandaise sauce. So Hollandaise traditionally used to be a difficult sauce to make because you had to sit there with a double boiler and a whisk and whisk the eggs over the double boiler softly so that it wouldn't curdle on you and you wouldn't make scrambled eggs while you drizzle in hot butter. It was complicated back in culinary school, but today we're going to work a lot smarter and not harder, and we're going to use our blender. Make it a lot easier because this is way better than hand whisking something. So we're going to start by separating 3 eggs. All we're going to use is the yolks. But we don't want to waste the whites. So we're going to save those in a separate container and use them later on. Maybe for breakfast in the morning, make some egg whites. That's 2. And we have 3. Perfect. So let's add that in. Fantastic. To that, we're going to add the juice of half a lime. If you don't have limes and you have lemons, you can use that as well. Traditionally, it's with lemon, but I have limes, so that's what we're going to be using now. That's what the trees are giving right now, so that's what we're using. Then to that, we're going to add Dijon mustard. Not only does it add flavor and a little bit of acidity, oh, that made a mess. It's also a natural emulsifier, which means it's going to blend everybody all together and help keep them together. So we're adding teaspoon and a half of Dijon mustard, cayenne pepper, literally the tiniest little bit of cayenne. You don't want a lot. It's so spicy and it doesn't really impart tons of flavor. It just adds heat. But adding a tiny little bit to this, to such a rich sauce, is going to add that heat that it needs to kind of break through that richness. And now we're going to crack in some salt. That's perfect. So we're going to place this on the base and we're going to whirl it and slowly drizzle in the melted butter. Okay, so we have the ingredients in the blender for the hollandaise, and all I'm going to do now is turn this on medium speed. And we're going to let it just blend the eggs for a couple of seconds, and then I'm going to slowly drizzle in through the little feed section back here, half a cup of warm melted butter. Okay, you see how it's turned this like amazing pale yellow color? That's your hollandaise color. So let's taste it. Check for consistency. See, it's nice and thick. It's not runny. That's perfect. Okay, so that's gonna be fantastic on top of all of this. So now we're just gonna leave that aside and keep it warm so that it doesn't separate on us. Although it shouldn't, because that's what you had that Dijon in there for. But just in case, we're going to keep it warm, set it aside, fry our eggs, and put our whole dish together. Okay, so for this, we're going to start going with the dish with the part of it that's working in the skillet, which is we're going to be tossing our vegetables, our chorizo, and our chicken together. So I'm going to start by dicing up half of an onion. Now, you don't even need this much. This is a lot, so I'm probably going to only use half of it. This onion was quite large. And we're just going to cut it up really simply. Just a rough dice. This is a home style food, which means that's a fancy way of saying not perfect. So just a simple dice on that, and we're going to do the same thing with the bell pepper. Now the bell pepper tends to be a little small, so we're only going to use about half of it. Now you can dice your vegetables as big or as small as you want. If you want really chunky veg, go ahead and make the dice a little bit bigger. But medium dice for this is pretty good. It gives you even distribution. Perfect. We're gonna set that aside. This corn, I took the liberty of roasting ahead of time in the air fryer. It's just regular corn on the cob, and I popped it in there. It just makes it a lot easier. And it cooks fairly quickly. Set that aside as well. So this is about 1 cob. Now, the chicken breast, I did the same thing. I took this chicken breast and I cooked it in the air fryer. Comes out fantastic. I'm a big fan of this air fryer. So I'm probably gonna use one of these larger breasts and the other one we can save for another meal. Sometimes they flake apart like that, that's fine. Again, home style cooking. So you're gonna give it a rough dice because you want to know you're eating pieces of chicken in this. Okay, so that's ready to go. We're gonna start the chorizo in the skillet first, and then we're gonna add the vegetables and finish off with the chicken. I'm gonna show you guys how to do that. Okay guys, so here we have the raw chorizo. This isn't the smoked solid chorizo that you get in a hard casing. This is the raw kind. And it comes with a ton of fat in it. As you can see, it's kind of simmering in there. So I drain mine out. You could leave it and just add your potatoes to this directly and cook that fat in with the potatoes and almost fry them in the chorizo fat. I don't like that. So I opted to drain it out, and I still have the chorizo flavor without that excessive amount of fat. And then once I've drained it out and I have poured out the excess fat, I will cook the potatoes and then add this into it and toss it all together. Okay, so we drained off all the excess fat, we poured out the excess, and now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add some southern hash browns. Now just maybe a couple cups of these. I'm not gonna use the whole bag. And you can do 2 different things with this. You can either cook these on the side and serve them separately, or you can work it in with the whole hash and serve it on top of the tostadas. And that will either serve as a side dish or be blended in as an actual hash. It's up to you how you want to do it. I'm going to work it in with the rest of the stuff because that's the way we want to do it here. And that's the way Cheesecake Factory does it. So we're going to let these cook over medium heat. Just a tiny tablespoon of olive oil, and we're going to let them get nice and brown and pretty. To this, I'm going to add the bell pepper and the onion so that they can go sauteing and just releasing all those beautiful juices and flavors. And that way the potato is not just a bite of bland potato, but good bite of flavor. Okay guys, while this is sauteing, we're going to add some salt to this and some black pepper. Now the salt will help draw out the moisture in the vegetables, help them caramelize a little bit faster, and it just brings out flavor. Black pepper, you guys know I love it. And then once we stir that in, I'm going to add just a few dashes of garlic powder, ground cumin, and onion powder. And I don't measure this part. It is a measure with your heart sort of deal. This is just to add a little bit extra flavor because there's already going to be so much in the chorizo and everything else and the sauces and everything, that this is just, I like just adding a tiny little extra bit of love into the dish and making sure that everything that you're tasting has flavor to it, that you're not getting a bland bite. Because I find that that bland bite is like what kills the dish. If you season as you go, then everything will taste better. So here's where you see that I'm adding a little bit of all of this stuff. I'm going to toss it all together, make sure that it's evenly distributed throughout the dish. And then as soon as that's done, I'm going to add in the drained out chorizo. Now, I find it amazing the amount of fat that's drained out of this, and you'll see it now when I kind of like scrape it in there. It's just outrageous how much fat is in this. Some people love it, and you know, fantastic for them. I'm happy for them if they want to eat that. I prefer not to. It's just a matter of personal preference, to each their own. But I choose to drain that fat out and have it removed from the dish altogether, just so that I feel better about my health and the overall choices that I'm making for our family and for the meals that we have. Now we're going to start adding the corn and the cooked chicken. Break up the corn as you toss it up so it's evenly distributed throughout. And then now what I like to do is just spread it out in a thin layer, evenly across, and let it get kind of like a crust build up there. So we're gonna leave it on medium heat for just a few minutes so that it builds a nice, delicious, crispy crust on the bottom. And then we're gonna scrape it, flip it, and do the same thing on the other side. Okay, we've got this skillet over medium heat with butter in it, and we're adding in 2 eggs. And we're just gonna let those cook real quick. We don't wanna overdo it. And as soon as they're at the perfect doneness, we're gonna plate everything together. Okay guys, it's time to put it together. Everything is made, the eggs are fried, the hash is done, the ranchero sauce is good and warm and ready to go. We have the hollandaise made, so it's plating time. I'm gonna be using Guerrero brand tostadas. Now you can buy these in the stores all ready to go, and they're crunchy and they're delicious, and it's essentially a crispy tortilla. Now you can make this yourself by just taking regular tortillas that you buy, nice soft ones, corn tortillas, popping them into your air fryer or into your oven until they get crispy. But I wanted the extra oomph of making these a little faster, so I'm buying them already made. And we're gonna need 2 per plate, and this is what we're gonna do. Take a little bit of a ranchero sauce, and you're just gonna kind of spread a little bit on the bottom, just kind of as a nest for your tostadas to sit on without sliding. Let's clean up the edge. No drips. This is a beautiful dish. Then on here, we're gonna place our tostadas, just like that. Then to this, let me set this aside. Look at our hash, how beautiful it is. It's got nice crispy bits on it. That's the makings of a good hash. See that? Oh, beautiful. Okay, so we're gonna put some on top of each tostada. Now again, like I said, you can choose to leave the potato out of this part, cook it separately. You can cook it in the air fryer if you want to, but a traditional hash and the one at the restaurant at Cheesecake has the potatoes in it. And I'm gonna get you as close as possible to the restaurant, but making it at home a lot healthier than what you're getting over there, because we're not deep frying things like they're doing at the restaurants. Okay, now we're gonna top with our eggs. Your eggs are to cook to the doneness that you like. You can make them over easy, sunny side up. You can cook them however you want, scrambled even, over hard, whatever you like. Those are to order and even optional if you don't want to add them in. You don't have to. And we're just gonna finish it off with our Hollandaise sauce. Look at how beautiful that is. That is an extraordinary dish. Honestly, I couldn't be happier with it. Okay guys, so I recommend serving this delicious, delicious plate of food with their famous brown bread. Now, I didn't make that myself. I bought it at the store. Turns out they sell it in little bags at the grocery store. So all you have to do is take these, heat them up, and then you just serve them with a little bit of butter, and it's just like being at the restaurant. It's amazing. But this is amazing, and it's so much healthier, so much lighter, because we're not deep frying anything. Everything was homemade. We made it quick. Some of the stuff was even left over, so it worked out even fantastically. So let's give it a try. You know what? I was gonna be fancy and use a fork and a knife, but I don't think so. Look at that, with the ranchero sauce and everything. That's awesome. Excuse mess. That is so good. I can't wait. You guys are gonna really love this. Give this recipe a try. Wow, that is so good. Like, I'm shocking myself. But in reality, this is fantastic. I hope you guys like it as much as I do. Give it a try. It's fantastic. Guys, don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit the little bell so that you can be notified every single time I post a video. And if you guys have any ideas for me, anything in particular that you just love from the restaurants and you wish you could have it more often at home, let me know. I will look into it and I will come up with a fantastic recipe to share with you guys so that we can all enjoy this delicious recipes that you guys are letting me know. This is amazing. Like, I'm so excited that I made this. To be honest, I had never tried it at the restaurant. So now that I have, and I know how I can make it at home, I'm really actually quite happy that you suggested this and that I've given it a try. So thanks, because you've opened my horizons. I appreciate it. Let's keep it going. Let's keep making fantastic things together and sharing with each other, guys. Thank you so much. Have a great day.